Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, a neighbor hated that I bought a classic, beautiful 1965 Chevrolet C10 truck. He ended up vandalizing my vehicle because I supposedly broke the law. Here is what happened, let's dive right into the video. So I have lived in my home for 25 years, 20 of those years were with my parents, but when the mortgage was up, they decided to move on and retire elsewhere, gifting me the home as a 21st birthday gift. I could not have been more grateful. I'd been saving up to move out, but now I did not need to. I decided to spend some of the money on something else. So I've been a big fan of classic cars for most of my life. Me and my dad would always watch those shows where they vamp up old cars. I had always wanted to do it, so that's what I decided I would do. I bought a beaten-down 1965 Chevrolet C10 truck from a dealership that was 25 miles away. I had to get it towed to my house because of the condition it was in. The guy towing the car was so confused as to why I wanted it so badly, but I just could not explain the joy I felt when I saw just how much work the car would need before it was up and running. Honestly, it became my favorite pastime, and my dad came down lots to help out with it. As I've lived here for so long, I know all my neighbors and they all thought it was an interesting thing I was doing. They had no issues and sparked up lots of conversation about it. The issues began when the person to my right moved out and a new neighbor moved in. His name was Mark. The first time we met, I had gone over to his house to say hello. He seemed like a lovely chap, to be honest, and I thought we could end up having a great friendship. But a couple of days later, he was walking past my house as I was working on my Chevrolet, and those thoughts changed completely. I would like to note that said car is usually in my garage, and when I'm working on it, I have the garage door open. "What is this?" Mark asked, walking up my driveway. "I've been working on this for months now. I know it doesn't look like much, but trust me, it will come together," I said with a smile, not noticing the malice in his voice. "Well, it's a bit of an eyesore, isn't it?" he asked with a scoff. "Well, I guess so for now," I stated, standing up. "Would you mind keeping this shut while you're working on it?" he asked, pointing to the top of my garage. "I like some fresh air when I'm doing this. Why? What's the issue?" I was not really following where he was leading the conversation. "Look, you seem like a great guy and all, but I'm just not happy having this pile of junk as my view every time I walk past." He threw his arms up in the air. "You will only see it when I'm working on it, and you won't even see it for as long as you walk past. Unless you decide to walk over like you have done and gaze for longer." I'm not sure why, but I was starting to feel very defensive over my project. "Don't talk back to me like that, young man." He was barely 5 years older than me. "I'm sure this vehicle here causes lots of pollution. I can report that." You could only report something like that if it was running, and even so, you have no power to tell me not to drive it. If anything, I would just have to pay some more road tax for the extra emissions. I felt like I was talking to a kid who was denied a lollipop. You can't." He stormed away. After such a weird conversation, I shut up my garage for the day and decided to work on my car the following day. The next few months were just like that. Every time I would work on my car, he would come over and start telling me off and try to get me to stop. After a while, I would just carry on and ignore him while he ranted, and we had developed quite a hostile relationship. I would try to remain calm and see his reason, but I just couldn't. It was all such a confusing situation. I would try to get reasons out of him why it was such an issue, but all he could come up with was that it was an eyesore. But after I was coming to the end of my project, he could not really use that reason anymore, as it looked like a gorgeous classic car, or truck in this case. So once I had finished my project, I felt proud enough to move it to my driveway. And because I wanted to make room for another potential project as I had saved up more money, the first time I drove the car, I felt so proud. I rejoiced in the stares and nods I would get from people walking down the pavement, but then of course I had to run into Mark, who was on his morning run. I saw him coming down the pavement and I spotted that he noticed me, but then pretended not to have and had a feeling that he was up to something. And yes, he was. He suddenly ran out into the road, causing me to halt the car as fast as I possibly could. "What on earth are you doing?" I yelled out of the window. "Wow, you nearly ran me over, man." "I told you that car was trouble and now you're driving it too," Mark yelled from the road. "You came into the middle of the road, Mark?" "Yeah, and you would have heard me coming if that car wasn't so loud." I did not need to hear anything. I could see you. Do you hear people's thoughts or something? "No, but if I did, I could read yours. You're scared of what I might do now. I know you're driving this car." I stepped on the gas, forcing the car to stall, as I knew it would lurch forward a lot and scare my neighbor, which it did. His face turned red as he calmed from his embarrassing jump. I then watched as he got out his phone and started calling someone, and minutes later the police were here. "That's him! He's destroying the environment with this rust bucket machine on wheels! He's breaking the law!" Mark whined to the officers. I watched as the officers sighed and then started explaining to him that I wasn't doing anything wrong. He checked the number plate and saw that the vehicle was registered and that I was paying all the correct taxes and filed all the forms for registering a retired vehicle. The officers quickly left after scolding Mark for making a false statement and wasting their time. Mark glared at me and then stormed back to his house, flipping me the bird on his way. That night, I heard some scratching noise coming from outside at around 1 AM. I had gotten up to get some water. I poked my head out of my upstairs window and quickly woke up the whole way when I saw Mark scratching his keys across the metal of my truck. I thought about storming over there to give him a piece of my mind, but then I saw how much damage he had already done and decided to film him instead for proof. So that's what I did. For 20 minutes while he bashed and scratched my car, popping the tires and spray painting horrible things over the windows. When he was done and was walking away, I zoomed in on him before shouting, "Oh hey Mark!" He froze and slowly turned around to see me waving at him with my phone in hand. As I had zoomed in, the video now clearly depicted his face, which I knew would help me. I spent that night in quite a depressed state. All my hard work was down the drain. But then I realized that, to be honest, it was more the doing up of the car that was enjoyable than the actual driving and owning of it. And hey, now I get to do it all over again. "Look, I took it too far, okay? I'm sorry. You can drive your car, just don't do anything with that video," Mark had called around the following morning. "Oh, I can drive my car? Thank you, Mark, that means a lot." I slammed the door in his face. I had already sent the video to the police, and later in the day, an officer called around to get my statement and finalize the details. Mark was still inside his house. Clearly, he realized his fate and decided not to run. He did try to waffle his way out, claiming it was a twin or some nonsense, but the officer was having none of it, and after a few minutes, Mark hung his head and walked over to the cop car. I pressed charges, of course, and got the maximum amount for this situation of $50,000, which is way more than I spent on the car, but I was able to factor in my time, which made it such a high figure. He is also now behind bars for vandalism, and once he is out, I have a restraining order against him, effective immediately, so he won't be living next door to me, that's for sure. And yeah, ripe stars, what is it with these people that absolutely despise classic cars? Honestly, I would take a beautiful, nicely restored classic car over an ugly SUV any day. But maybe that's just me. Anyway, if you enjoy these stories, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even leave a comment if you want to support me. Thank you so much, and the next one is an Am I the A-hole story. My wife, 37 female, and I, 38 male, have been married for 12 years and have 3 kids, 10, 8 and 6. During the pandemic, my wife's job allowed her to switch to 100% work from home. They never required her to go back to the office because her productivity actually increased, so there was just no need. It made things easier for us too. I dropped the kids off at school and daycare in the morning, and she picked them up in the afternoon. She was able to keep up with a few things around the house during the day, and we saved on gas and car maintenance, etc. A few months ago, though, she was contacted by a recruiter about a job. It would be a nice step up in her career path as well as a boost in pay, but there were drawbacks. The company had no work from home policy and would require her to work in the office. This was apparently non-negotiable. It would also be a 45-minute commute for her. We talked it over a lot, and I expressed my concerns about how this would impact our daily lives. I told her that I don't necessarily think that the bump in pay is worth the major changes to our life. Not to mention the stress that a long commute can have on people, and that could impact their mood and how they interact at home. She assured me that everything would be fine and that we would just adjust as a family, and soon the new routine would just become our new normal. I told her that I would never tell her not to take the job, but I just don't know if it's worth the changes that it's going to bring. Ultimately, the decision was hers and she accepted the new job. She has been there for about 10 weeks now. To say it has been an adjustment is an understatement. She wakes up and leaves before the kids even get up. She will help get a few things ready for them before she goes, but the entire morning kid routine is on me. I also do both drop-off and pick-up for all the kids too. Evenings have been a huge mess because I get home and try to get the kids distracted while I start dinner. When my wife gets home, she is usually stressed from the drive. Her commute has turned into over an hour due to construction and traffic, and takes 15 minutes for herself to calm down before then eating alone. After dinner, she's going to bed earlier because she has to wake up earlier too. I told her that I feel her new job has put an unfair amount of household and childcare duties on me and that she is being far less present in our lives when she is home. She told me that we just need to give it more time to adjust and things will get easier. I told her that 10 weeks is a pretty good adjustment period and I hate it so far. She told me I'm being an unsupportive jerk and I need to give it more time. And yeah, ripe stars, let me know in the comments what you think about this one. Do you think OP is being an unsupportive jerk and a-hole here or not? Comment number 1, everyone sucks here, you two are talking past each other. You say you wanted to come up with solutions, but you don't suggest any actual solutions. She was dismissive of your concerns and also didn't suggest any solutions. She's making more money, use that to outsource some of this stuff. As a general matter, I don't think it's fair to expect that over the course of a lifetime, your spouse's career will never require you to pick up the slack at home. These things tend to shift. She handled more stuff while she was working from home, now it's your turn. If it is unsustainable for you, then absolutely talk about solutions, but I hate it is not a solution. Comment number 2, you are the a-hole. Why is it too much to expect men to support their partner's advancement and career when women do it all the time? Suck it up, Socha, they are your children too. Comment number 3, you're the a-hole. 10 weeks is not long enough to adjust a whole family to a new routine, nor for your wife to settle in at the job and get used to the commute, change in sleep schedule, etc. And honestly, jobs are extra tiring when you are new and learning on a curve. You gotta cut her a little bit of a break. Work together to find solutions. All sorts of families deal with similar work situations, it's possible. Don't just tell her that she shouldn't get a chance to give the new job a fair shake or guilt her into quitting. She deserves a chance to pursue her career goals. Maybe instead you can take a step back at your job. Maybe you can reduce your hours or work from home. I grew up never seeing my dad before work in the morning. We have a great relationship to this day. My mom got us ready for school and back from school and ran a home daycare at the same time. You can do this, you just need to adjust as a couple. Your 10-year-old should be able to get themselves ready for school. The younger kids can be shown how to prep the night before, school bag is ready, clothes picked out, mom's home during this time, maybe it's a task she can do with them. Kids can help with dinner even at 6 years old. They can set the table, help unload the dishwasher, etc. as age appropriate. They also should be able to entertain themselves after school. You can work through this together, make a plan, assess the distribution of work together as well. And the next one is a fantastic XXL petty revenge story. So my stepmother married my dad 10 years ago when I was 35. From the start she was awful. She would listen in on every phone call. We didn't find that out for years. She made sure he didn't see his grandkids anymore, just hers. He was not allowed to see us either. Plans were made by him and cancelled by her. The worst part is when he was very sick with cancer, she refused point blank to keep us updated on his health. She told us in a group text that we were too mean to her, so we did not get the information. How were we mean? We did not send her cards and flowers on Mother's Day. Sometimes he would call me because she forgot to take his phone away from him after he was so ill and could not get out of the bed to retrieve it. She did not even tell us that he passed for 3 days after. She wanted to make sure we couldn't make the funeral so she could talk badly about us. She wrote the obituary, spelled all his bio family names wrong, and listed all her kids and grandkids as bonus children and left out information like his parents and sibling names. She was a horrible person. I knew that there was an insurance policy for me and my siblings to split. It was not even that big, but she was so mad that we got anything at all that she refused to give us the policy paperwork or give us his social security number so we could look it up ourselves. She claimed we would just use it to open credit cards even though the government and credit card agencies had his death certificate. She told us that we didn't deserve anything at all, and she was mad that he didn't leave the policy to her kids instead. So, having her phone number, address and email, I signed her up for everything: MLMs, religious calls, window and roof replacements, things like AliExpress offer emails, vacation entries that just sell your name to everyone. My daughter even helped me find new things to sign her up to so we could ramp up the spam. I heard that she was forced to change her phone number because it was so bad. Serves her right, I regret nothing, and oh, there was in fact a policy and we did get it thanks to my mom keeping some old tax returns. I made sure to send my stepmom a screenshot of the policy payout. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. I moved into a new neighborhood about 3 months before the story begins. In that short time, I already knew that the HOA was made up of crazy people that like to make crazy rules. Many of them had to do with houses looking a certain way, a limited number of acceptable colors that you can make your doors, not having any kind of custom-made windows, and even if you had an overhang, it had to be only a certain height and could only come out of your house an exact measurement. It really was nuts, and I got a letter in the mail from them one day saying that the HOA was holding a meeting about a new rule they wanted to put in place. That being no satellite dishes allowed because it made the neighborhood ugly according to them. I at first thought this was ironic for me because I work for a TV provider and my main job is installing satellite dishes. Working for them actually has some perks, and while I don't get free service, I do get a nice enough discount that is the best option for me. I never heard anything about when the meeting even took place, and I found out from my neighbor what this HOA does to get what they want. Instead of an open forum where citizens can have input, the HOA board members have a private closed meeting so they can do anything they want. I'm not an easy person to intimidate, so I decided to just go ahead and install my satellite dish anyway. While I know the HOA can regulate a lot of things, there is no way they have a right to limit my choice of TV provider. Since I know how to install them myself, I just picked up a basic dish and went into my room to install it. While I was up there, I heard yelling below me and saw a guy that I recognized as one of the HOA people. I was not going to fight with somebody like this, so I just went back to installing the dish and thought that once I got down I could tell him that he was not going to stop me. Instead though, he actually climbed up the ladder onto my roof and started pulling at the dish, screaming about how it was against the rules and I was making the neighborhood ugly. When I reached to try and stop him from ripping and destroying the dish, he shoved me hard. I honestly don't really remember falling off of the roof, just my face down in the dirt and a searing pain going through my arm. I was lucky that the yelling got neighbors' attention, and when I fell off, one of them called an ambulance for me. He not only pushed me off of my own roof, but broke my arm on top of it. All because he decided it was a good idea to go onto not only my property, but on my actual house and try to start a fight with me. One might think at this point the HOA would send an apology or something to try and stop me from wanting to sue the hell out of them, but instead I came home to a letter in my mailbox that I was being fined for breaking the HOA rules. At this point, it really did not matter who was in the right or wrong when it came to the dish. The HOA guy had assaulted me, and there is never an excuse for something like that. I sued not only him, but the entire HOA for my accident. The man who did it was charged with assault, and the other members got a warning because it came forward that they all knew he was going to trespass on the property of anybody that was putting up a satellite dish. He had to pay me for the hospital visit and for all the work I would miss. There was no way for me to do my job with a broken arm, and even if I could do it, the safety issues would be too crazy, so I was out of work until my arm was healed. I wasn't done with the HOA just yet and also sued them for violating my rights by telling me that I was not allowed to use a provider that I wanted for TV. It turns out that they went way over what they were allowed to do, and while door colors and sidewalk lights are within their right, they cannot stop me from having a satellite dish on my home. While this whole thing was going on, the HOA was scrambling and trying to figure out a way to get out of this whole thing without too much backlash. They were fined by the courts, and my lawyer ended up getting me a small settlement with them. If they had never made an illegal bylaw, then I would have never gotten pushed off of the roof. Of course, the guy who pushed me resigned from the HOA, which is code for he was forced out. He did not end up having to go to jail and instead got community service hours. The HOA board was angry at me for suing them and getting them in trouble for their stupid fake rules. I wanted to get a little bit of revenge on them, but it had to wait until my arm was fully healed. I did not mention this before, but during the whole roof fight he did manage to rip off my dish and it was basically destroyed. When I got a new dish, I made sure this time to get a nice big one that nobody could miss seeing. That was not the real revenge though. The entire neighborhood already did not like the HOA, so when they got wind of what happened, they were even more upset with them. They did not want to stage a big riot or have their HOA shut down like others have done. Instead, I got my revenge by telling all of them how wonderful my company was and that going with a satellite dish is a great idea. Many were sold on the idea, and I told them that if they ordered the dish, I would come and install it for them for free. I did not care about the money at this point, I just wanted to really stick it to them. Of course, some did not want to change their provider, and that was more than okay. Enough did though, and that now you cannot go down a block without seeing a big satellite dish on a few roofs. It drove their HOA mad, but they had no ability to do anything about it. They hated finally being in a position where they had no power after a long time of controlling anything they wanted. If I'm being totally honest, they might have gotten away with fining me for the original satellite dish and maybe just having a judge telling them to remove the rule, and it would all quietly go away. When a man decides to go onto my roof and break my arm over something that is not hurting anybody though, that kind of thing cannot just happen quietly. He knows that if he goes anywhere near me again, I can call the police and have him put in jail this time. I have no idea how he managed to get away without it to begin with. My guess is he knows somebody that is just as scummy as he is. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.